Being right is hard. Being right all the time is impossible. And having to be right all of the time in front of hundreds of thousands of people is terrifying. But this is the reality that a lot of these social commentary YouTubers put themselves through on a regular basis. At its core, social commentary is basically just being professionally right about stuff and giving nuanced opinions on things that are happening. But that need to be perfect and right all the time is a huge weight to hold. And why I'm specifically targeting Kuncan Dastner to highlight this issue is for several reasons. The first is that he's one of my favorite YouTubers. I watch pretty much all of the videos that he puts out. They are consistently of high quality and well researched. Even if I don't always agree with what he has to say in the videos, I always respect the methods by which he arrives at the conclusion that he does. He does his best to be nuanced and fair to every side of an issue, and even if we are to land on different sides of an argument or a problem that has happened, I can at least always respect the methods and the logic by which he got there. And the second reason is I feel like he's in a bit of a bubble on his own when it comes to the commentary side of YouTube. See, when I think of just commentary as a general niche on YouTube, I think of large channels like Danny Gonzalez, Drew Gooden, and Curtis Comp. But realistically, despite the fact that they're kind of seen as the big three of the commentary side of YouTube, they lean far more to the comedy side of commentary. If we look at Danny Gonzalez's most recent videos, I think we can see that there's not a whole lot of social commentary here. It's primarily just comedy. The objective is to look at something that's silly or funny or goofy and to make jokes about it, and then to have a good time and just kind of move on. In fact, the only social commentary style video he's done recently is his video on the Liver King. But it's hard to give him too much credit about the social commentary side of YouTube for this video specifically, because I think pretty much everyone just collectively agreed that the Liver King is a horrible scammer who just targeted insecure men and then tried to profit off them with these wildly overpriced supplements. There's not a whole lot of nuance to that case. It's pretty open and shut. And honestly, that same thing extends to Curtis Connor and Drew Gooden as well. If you look through their catalog, it's primarily more comedy style videos with the occasional commentary-esque video thrown in, like Curtis Connor's Russell Hartley Has Returned video. But honestly, I have to say that's kind of the same as the Liver King video from Danny Gonzalez. Russell Hartley is bizarrely misogynistic, and he believes that women essentially only exist as an object for his pleasure. And then he tries to sell young insecure men courses about this to teach them to dominate women and then become like rich and successful or ascend the matrix or whatever he's talking about these days. And honestly, no reasonable person takes his side. He's pretty consistently mocked across the internet. The third reason I'm giving Kuncan Dastner a bubble when it comes to the more social commentary side of YouTube is because he picks issues that don't necessarily have a right or wrong side. Now, this isn't something that's 100% unique to him, but it's something about his content that is more unique. He's mentioned this a couple of times in his videos, but it's fairly common to see channels that get started on very complex social commentary style videos slowly drifting away from that style of video and towards a more low-hanging fruit style of video. And I don't mean that as a criticism. I don't think one type of video is better than another. Whether you choose to do a commentary video about old established IPs being kind of rewritten for modern media expectations, or you choose to make fun of the Fresh and Fit podcast because everyone on that podcast is a raving lunatic, both are fun and entertaining and interesting, and sometimes I even learn something. But ultimately, they all serve to kill time, which is the primary reason I'm watching YouTube in the first place. But I think the reason this drift from simple to complex happens so often is because it's just much easier to make fun of things like manosphere TikToks. Or it's at least easier than making a deep dive long form video essay about an issue that has two sides that both have some validity. Scripts like that can take days or even weeks to write, and some can even require interviewing people and trying to figure out what everyone on both sides of an issue actually believes. And on top of that, you have to give your own good faith perspective on that, because often these social commentary type videos are presenting both sides equally while also giving a good faith and slightly opinionated direction for the video. But then you have to make sure that the opinionated direction that you're giving to the video is not too overly aggressive such that it drowns out either one side or the other. And this balance can be very hard to strike. When I think of Danny Gonzalez, I immediately associate him with Curtis Connor and Drew Gooden. Similarly, when I think of Kuncan Dastner, I immediately associate him with Noah Samsen and Ro Ramden. However, I don't actually know if they kind of belong in that mental grouping that I've put them in. Noah Samsen's last several videos, for example, have been that more low-hanging style fruit that I mentioned earlier. In his last few videos, he has made fun of misogynistic YouTube shorts, mocked Sneeko, and made a kind of feel-good piece about a Jubilee video. And just going back through his catalog, there's not a whole lot of nuanced social commentary here. He picks things that are easy to be on one side of, and then make fun of the other side from. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying his content is inferior because of that, but it's just a different kind of content with a different kind of audience. But it is important to understand that this kind of content is simply easier to make, because if you see someone on a podcast being misogynistic, 10 times out of 10, you should make fun of them. Now, I can't speak to Ro Ramden as much because I don't watch as many of her videos, but looking at her last few, it seems like it's similar to Noah Samsen, though perhaps maybe a bit more nuanced. Purely from looking at the titles, it looks like she criticized Elon Musk, criticized J.K. Rowling, and defends trans advocacy, and so on. And while some of her videos could be nuanced, such as her Do We Need Sex Scenes in Media, which actually while I was writing the script, I added it to my watch later because I've had that in my notes app for forever to make a video talking about. But even then, I feel like I can probably guess what she's going to say in the video. She tends to lean towards what I would call the side of obviously right. Obviously, it's right that Elon Musk doesn't particularly care about people and is a bit of a moron. Obviously, it's right that being transphobic is wrong and J.K. Rowling is being rightly criticized for it. And there may be some pieces of nuance there, but generally with these kinds of topics, you can look at the title of the video and draw your own very reasonable conclusion as to the content of the video, and then most likely the video itself will align with that conclusion that you have already drawn. And even if we expand the bubble a little, we've got ones like Gunner TV, mostly comedy. Jake Doolittle, not exactly comedy, but it kind of leans more on the exposing things you should be disgusted by style of YouTube video. And even with creators like Anna Marie Forcino, even though she covers more Kuncan Dastner-esque topics, I do find myself viewing her titles similarly to how I would view Ro Ramden's. By looking at the title of the video, I already know what her conclusion is going to be and which side of an argument she's going to be on, and ultimately I can tell which direction the video is going to take. And this is because if you watch any of her videos, you can see that she's very left-leaning in her views and tends to be very progressive politically. And there is literally nothing wrong with that. She tends to make good points that I often agree with, but there's also not as much room for thought-provoking discussion in her videos because of the topics that she chooses. They're often political, and even in instances where they're not, you can pretty much just read the title and know which side of an argument she's going to fall on. Now, obviously, Kuncan and many other social commentary YouTubers in this genre have biases, just like we all do, but they're not as apparent when you look at any given topic. For example, let's look at his most recent video about the creator clash. I actually went into this video already knowing the entire situation and already having established which side of the argument I fell on. And I actually expected that Kuncan Dastner would fall on the same side of the argument as I did, because after all, I am a white male, and historically, we have always been correct and consistently made good decisions. But he actually ended up falling on the other side of the argument than I did, which I don't think is bad, because I'm not obviously going to criticize everyone that disagrees with me. But it just goes to show that, unlike with other creators, I can't look at a video of Kuncan Dastner's and always immediately tell which side of an argument he's going to fall on. And also, unlike with other creators, his title is sometimes things that a reasonable person could look at and disagree with. With his creator clash video, for example, he essentially concludes that Froggy Fresh is in the wrong. That's overly simplified, and you should definitely go watch the video for yourself, but for now, I'm going to use this overly simplified conclusion. Now, I, along with approximately 932 other people, actually disagreed with this. And that's not to bash Kuncan because I think he's bad or wrong for landing on another side of an argument from me, but rather to point out that he's willing to land on the unpopular side of an argument if that's the side of the argument that he reasonably believes to be correct. And with this Pedro Pascal video, I think a reasonable person could argue that it's not that big of a deal that major mainstream celebrities are objectified. You could argue that it's an image that he or his PR team has cultivated in order to make him more monetizable. you could argue that this is part of the reason for his rampant success in the last couple decades, and to criticize it is bizarre because that's the reason he got his fame. You could argue that by being in showbiz and taking on such high-profile roles, you automatically open yourself up to this kind of objectification, and it's not something you're allowed to really be upset about. Or you could argue that it's wrong to objectify someone no matter what, which is essentially what Kuncan Dastner argues. By the way, this next paragraph is so long that I'm going to have to read directly from my script just to make sure that I get it right. But the big issue with consistently going after these kinds of topics where there's so much complexity or nuance such that a reasonable person could land on either side of the argument is that every time you put out a video, there's a reasonable person that's criticizing you for it. At the beginning of this video, I said that being professionally right is terrifying, but I actually want to amend that a little bit and say that being professionally right in the face of two reasonable arguments, that's what's terrifying. And that's a lot of responsibility. Trying to get one side of something right can be difficult enough, but trying to get both sides of something right simultaneously while also trying to form your own reasonable opinion about which side of an argument you fall on is pretty consistently close to impossible. Because if you have a complex issue and then you present one reasonable side and then you present another reasonable side and then you take a side, you are by definition going against something that you have just defined as reasonable. If you say there's a reasonable side to Froggy Fresh's argument and then you say there's a reasonable side to Creator Clash's argument, and then you say that you are on the side of Creator Clash's argument, then you are by definition disagreeing with a recently touted as reasonable Froggy Fresh. And that constant pressure to be professionally right while disagreeing with a reasonable argument that you have just presented has got to be a huge weight on his shoulders and also on the shoulders of any channels like him. So I guess in conclusion, all I can really say is that if someone is trying to present two sides of an argument and then picks a side, in good faith, try and give them the benefit of the doubt, that they're a good person, even if they pick the side of the argument that you disagree with. Because this kind of nuanced thinking that these social commentary channels promote is something that we desperately need more of. But it's also something that's really scary, because there's always a person with a reasonable argument that's angry about your conclusion. Thanks for watching.